guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Liz, and today I'm so excited because I'm going to be sharing with y'all the story of how I chose Notre Dame. So a while back, I made a big video on how I applied to college, my whole college application story. I applied to way too many schools. So if you haven't seen that, definitely go check that out first. But I didn't really talk a ton about how I came to choose Notre Dame and kind of why I chose that over the other schools. I definitely have kind of like a long drawn out story of how I ended up even applying to Notre Dame, and then once I applied, I think I had kind of a unique experience in my choosing process. Obviously, everybody's different. I don't think there's one perfect school for anyone, and I just want to share what my story was with you guys. It's not story time without tea, so here we go. Okay, so to start off, a very important thing to note of why I ended up applying to so many schools, why I knew as much about college applications as I did by the time I got to high school, was the fact that my mom used to work as a high school guidance counselor. So a lot of her job involved helping her students apply to colleges, looking at different colleges, like going through that whole entire process. So she knew the college application process very well. So when we were growing up, we would always go visit random schools. Anytime we took a vacation, anytime we were going to visit family members across the country, we would always make it a point to stop and see at least one school wherever we went. Now, keep in mind, this started when I was like 9 or 10. So for the majority of the time that I was looking at these schools, I wasn't actually looking at them as like colleges. It was just like a park with buildings, kind of. So like every school we visited, I wasn't like, ooh, what's their academics like? I was like, oh cool, there's trees. However, because of this, by the time we graduated, I think my sister and I came to the conclusion that we had seen exactly 30 schools. That is a lot. I wouldn't really recommend that to anyone if you're like actually looking for college that whole time. Like I said, the majority of those schools we saw at an age when college was just not even on my radar. But at the same time, I do think it gave me a weirdly strong sense of what I did and didn't want in a school. At least like location and like aesthetic wise. I am very much a big vibes person. Obviously, once you look into a school more, you're going to really be able to make your decision. But I think seeing all those schools at a very young age made me very like comfortable with the college application process and just the idea of, yeah, after high school, I'm going to go live in a new city and live at one of these places that I've seen. It really was very excited about the idea of going out of state and going to someplace totally new because I had grown up seeing that. So Notre Dame was actually the first, or at least one of the first schools that we visited. I visited for the first time when I was 9 or 10. We were on our way to Minnesota to visit my aunt, and we had to stop like somewhere along the way, and my dad was like, oh, we're kind of by Notre Dame and I kind of want to see the stadium. So we just happened to stop, and I was like in love. I was so excited. Like I said, with the vibes, I needed someplace with a lot of trees, and Notre Dame has so many trees. It's just like a park, which is not the only reason to choose a college, but like in my mind, that was a really good reason to choose a college, was there was a lot of trees. So we visited campus. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. I still, to this day, after seeing all of the schools that I did, it's at least in my top like 3 favorite campuses, if not my favorite campus. Obviously, at this point, I didn't know anything about Notre Dame except like the campus and the football. I knew that there was a lot of school spirit, and that was definitely something I wanted. So essentially, for the rest of elementary school, middle school, high school, I was legitimately obsessed with Notre Dame. Everybody who knew me knew that I loved Notre Dame. When I ended up choosing between schools, when people heard that I got into Notre Dame, they were like, why are you choosing? Like, isn't it just a given you're gonna go there? You've been talking about it for like 10 years. But by the time I got to sophomore year of high school, I had obviously been thinking about what I wanted to do in college a little bit more and as a potential career. And I ultimately decided, at least at that point, that I wanted to go for education, and I wanted to be an elementary school teacher, which I still think I would have loved, and I still think that would have been really fun. But obviously that's not what I'm doing now. So then this became a problem because Notre Dame doesn't really have a like specific education program. A lot of people do go there and like end up becoming teachers, and they just study something a little bit more like subject related in their undergrad. But I knew that if I wanted to go for education, I wanted to go to a school with a very specific education program. I looked at a lot of schools that the only reason I liked them was that they had an education program, which I think is also something that's really important to note when you're looking for schools is, yes, it's it's important to choose a school that has a really good program for you, but also don't pick a school just for a program, because chances are your interests are going to evolve at least a little bit, and so many people change their majors. So if you go into a school not really liking anything but the program you're going into, if you end up changing your mind about what you want to study, then you're kind of in a bad spot. And I think that's what I was kind of falling into the trap of, because I was kind of excited about education. I wasn't super stoked about it, but I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I was picking schools that really only had that program. So I wasn't in love with the schools, and I was following schools for a program that I wasn't really that into. Fast forward ahead to my junior year, I applied for the Notre Dame summer leadership seminar thing. There was a bunch of pre-college summer programs you could do, and I applied to the leadership one. I really went into that with the mindset of this is the one time I will get to be on Notre Dame's campus. I'm probably not gonna get in, and or if I do get in, they won't have my program, so I can't go anyways. I remember opening up my email and seeing that I did not get in, and I was crushed, because in my mind that was my Notre Dame rejection. I was like, wow, if I can't get into their leadership program, I'm not gonna be able to get into the school. I kind of thought that's where everything would end for me with Notre Dame. One thing though that I kept doing that I'm so glad I did, that totally I think changed the game for me, was I kept going to information nights for Notre Dame. Now, depending on where you live, a lot of colleges will do information nights where they pretty much just talk about the school. They give you a little crash course of their programs, their campus, everything like that. And they have these for virtually every school. So I went to at least 4 or 5 ones of these for Notre Dame. Through these programs, I really got a better sense of what Notre Dame was about, what the entire school was like. Another important thing about this is that I met my admissions rep, which was so wonderful, and I will get to more of that later in the story. If you recently applied to college and you are looking to do those information nights and stuff like that, obviously with COVID, those are probably just not happening. Obviously, I don't know a ton about that right now because I'm not going through that process anymore, but you can still do a lot to get informed about schools. Most schools do have a virtual tour option on their website, so definitely go check out all of the materials on those websites. Look up who your admissions rep is ahead of time and email them any questions you have. All the admissions reps that I met in person were super nice, so I imagine they'd be super nice over email too. Back to my junior year of high school. The summer before my senior year, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, because I had thought I was maybe gonna do this Notre Dame program and then I didn't get in. But I was like, if I can't do that, I might as well just do something fun for the summer. So on a whim, I decided to apply to a pre-college summer program at AMDA, which, if you don't know what that is the American Musical and Dramatic Academy in New York City. To this day, that is the program and experience that I truly accredit to where I am in college now. So I ended up doing the acting program. It technically was supposed to be split into film and TV and then acting for stage, but they just didn't have a ton of people for either, so they combined them. And I met the most wonderful people. Oh my gosh, we still have a Snapchat group. I didn't really think I wanted to be an actress or anything, but it was the first time that I had been surrounded by people who were equally as excited about the arts as I was. Not many people at my school really went into anything theater related or film related, so I was never really surrounded by people who wanted to make a career out of those things, and it was just really inspiring to finally be surrounded by that and to know that that's something that I could also pursue. So now it is the end of my junior summer, and I remember I was driving to dance one day, and I had always been caught up on what I think I should do and what other people think I should do, and what's gonna be the most stable career path. And I was driving with my mom, and I remember her asking me if I could do anything, money aside, realisticness aside, just anything, what would I want to do? And I told her I would want to work on a show, working on the production or maybe costumes or something like that. I don't know why, but I just had this aha moment of why not then? If this is something that I keep coming back to and keep thinking, oh, if I could do anything, that's what I would want to do, now's the time to do it, so I should just do it. So that is a very long-winded answer of how I ended up switching my intended major from education to film and theater and everything artsy and fun, which is super important because now I was looking at a totally different set of programs, a totally different set of schools, and now I was approaching my senior year. So all of the years that we had spent looking for colleges and looking for education programs suddenly just went out the window because now I was looking for something totally different and I didn't have that much time. The great thing about this though is that Notre Dame does have a film and television and theater program, which is now my major, and I love it. So all of a sudden Notre Dame was back on my radar. I thought, okay, maybe I actually have a shot of getting in. I had started taking my SATs and I was slowly working up to Notre Dame range. I remember when I finally got my last test, I like emailed my mom. I think I still have the email, and the header was just, I'm in Notre Dame range, because I finally like hit their benchmark SAT, which obviously that is not the only reason I got in. Fast forwarding ahead to December of my senior year, I got accepted early action to Notre Dame. I was so excited. So obviously because I applied early action, that was one of the first schools that I found out about, and I still had to wait for a lot of my other decisions to come in. I actually applied to more schools after I got in to Notre Dame. I applied to Northwestern on the last day that you could actually apply. It was like literally on January 1st because I'm crazy. So by no means after I got that decision was I actually set on going to Notre Dame. By the time I got to April, I had narrowed it down to 3 schools, which were Notre Dame, Northwestern, and U Chicago. And so for the month of April, I had 3 admitted students days planned, like little trips to go actually see the school, which obviously, disclaimer, I know especially now, it is just not possible for a lot of people to actually see campuses. And while this was a pretty instrumental part in me deciding to choose Notre Dame, I know a ton of people who didn't visit campus and still absolutely love it. I don't think you need to see the campus to really love your school, but I think there's a lot of stuff you can do, like I said, with the virtual tours and just reaching out as much as you can to kind of supplement that. So Notre Dame just happened to be the first school of that set of 3 that I was supposed to go visit. My dad and I just went and we drove down there. It was only for 3 days, and we just happened to get the 3 days in April in South Bend when it was 75 and sunny. Like legitimately it felt like summer, and as someone who is very much a vibes person, this was like the perfect storm. We got there and the sun was shining and everyone was out on the quad and playing frisbee and eating ice cream, and like it was just so quintessentially college, and it looked like a movie college to me. So right off the bat, I was very impressed. I was very excited. All of the information sessions we went to were so helpful. Of course, they do one like at the top of the student center, which overlooks the stadium. Obviously, like they know what they're doing, because I was just so impressed. And so a few, I don't know, like very serendipitous things happened on this trip. I remember we were going to a session and they had this whole presentation with a bunch of different speakers, like student body president, all of that. And they had the band play, the alma mater, and I cried. And then we walked out and we were like running, legitimately running, because the women's basketball like national championship was on. I think that was the game. It was like a big game. It was on in the student center, and we literally ran into one of the girls I used to dance with at my old dance studio. We were never really like close, but we always knew of each other, and I had no idea she went to Notre Dame. I literally ran into her and she was like, Elizabeth? And I'm like, Audrey? And it was just so weird. She gave me her number. She was like, oh my gosh, you should come. This is like the best school. And she was so nice. And I was like, literally, what are the chances? So we go to the student center and everyone was all set up in front of this big screen that they have in the middle of the building and just cheering and all dressed up. And it was so much fun. Oh my gosh. While we were there, we went to one of the like food stations that they have in the student center and ran into my admissions rep. He was just walking around. I've never seen him again in the time that I've been there, but the one time I saw him in person was this same trip. Another big thing about this trip was that I met with a lot of people in my department. So I met with one of the heads of the department and he was so lovely. He talked with us for like at least an hour. I also went on a little bit of a tour of DPAC and I met my now boss at the costume shop. And so she was like, do you want to see the costume shop? And I'm like, of course I want to see the costume shop. It's beautiful and has costumes and sparkly things. The whole shop is just like an organized, beautiful place. So after that, I really was hooked. About 3 days later, I officially committed to Notre Dame. I was so excited to cancel all of my other trips. I was just so ready to be excited about a school, and I honestly have not looked back since. There was really never a moment where I regretted my choice or was even thinking about another school. Once I committed, I was so excited. So that's the overall story of how I came to apply to Notre Dame and ultimately choose Notre Dame. But I just wanted to get into a few more specifics of why I think you should apply to Notre Dame, why I chose Notre Dame, and why I think it is just such a great mix of everything I saw at other colleges all in one school. So I have 4 main reasons why I chose Notre Dame. The first is the people. Obviously, I've already talked a lot about how nice everyone was when I went to visit the school, but even more so than that, everyone I interacted with, whether they were an admissions rep or at one of the info nights or past students, anything like that, everyone was so genuinely excited to talk about Notre Dame and excited to share more about their experience. Everyone was so friendly, so personable, and really seemed like they were proud of where they went and where they were affiliated with. The second reason was my program. The FTT program at Notre Dame was really the first and only program where I really felt like I could study everything that I loved to do. Since I started looking at arts programs really just in my senior year, I hadn't really looked at them before that, I felt very rushed and just very, very stressed out by the process of looking for like theater or film programs. Ultimately now I am a film major and I'm so excited with my decision. I think this is definitely where I need to be, but the FTT program at Notre Dame definitely allows me to kind of study all of the aspects of the entertainment industry and still take a ton of theater electives even though I'm a film concentration, and really just learn about whatever interests me. My third reason for choosing Notre Dame was the school spirit. Like I've said, I just really wanted a school with a lot of high energy people, a lot of sports to cheer for, just a school where I could like be excited to go to that school. Notre Dame football games are just so much fun. Oh my gosh, my parents are obsessed with them now. They've been to a few games and have been very fortunate to be able to come visit. They bring their friends and they're all excited, and it makes me excited that they're excited, and oh, I just love it. It's so much fun. And my last reason of why I chose Notre Dame was the focus on faith. I technically grew up Catholic. We didn't really like go to church that much, and it didn't really like bother me really when I was growing up. And truth be told, for the majority of my life when I was looking at Notre Dame, the fact that it was a Catholic school didn't really like click in my head much. I don't really know what I thought that meant, but I didn't really think about it too much until I was like actually legitimately applying for schools. I was just really excited to learn more about faith in general and grow in my own faith if possible, and I really think I have. I think the wonderful thing about Notre Dame is that faith is really just something that brings everyone together no matter what that is for different people, and I think that Notre Dame just does a really great job of balancing that faith with everything else that they have to offer and just really making it a place that you want to be and that you're excited to be and that you feel at home. So that is it. Those are all of the reasons, the main reasons, there's a lot more reasons of why I chose Notre Dame. I could not be more happy with my decision. Obviously, like I said in the beginning, I really don't think that there's one perfect school for anyone. I think that there's just so many factors that go into picking a school, and you also don't have to be totally in love with it from day one. A lot of the reasons that I have come to love Notre Dame, I didn't even realize the full extent of when I first visited Notre Dame. I know when I was applying, I was really trying to like actively not choose Notre Dame because I thought I was just trying to apply out of like nostalgia, but I almost think that that process of trying not to pick it really made me 10 times more confident in my decision, because I knew that when I did come to that final conclusion that I wanted to go to Notre Dame, it really was genuine, and I really had thought through a lot of my other options and really thought through like the pros and cons of going to Notre Dame. If you're someone who applied to Notre Dame and is still trying to make that decision, I hope this was maybe a little bit helpful for you. If you want to apply to Notre Dame in future years, I would absolutely recommend it. I'd love to answer any questions you guys have on Notre Dame. I certainly don't know everything, but I do think I've learned a lot in my past year and a half at school. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you all have a very lovely day. Bye guys.